Hey everyone, today I want to talk about using references in art. And I gotta be honest here, this is not something that I have mastered myself. I always struggled with references and direct copying. I have discussed this on another videos here on the channel. But I want to try and compile here everything that I've learned from experience, from myself, from other artists I followed over the years, students that I have conversations with, that I taught, that I mentored, and all of that, and trying to put together in an informative way so you can figure out your use of references. I tend to put them into those four categories that we're going to talk about. In the fifth one, I would love to hear how you guys use. So please share in the comments some of your best sources for references and so on, so that we can all learn as a community. So the first of them is observation and direct reference. So you need to draw a hand, you look at your own hand in the mirror, you take a photograph or something like that, or you're doing just a study from life. That's direct observation. The second one is visual library and design/functionality. So you are growing your understanding of how things look and getting all that information into your head so that you can use that later on. Especially from drawing from memory is going to be super useful here so that you really store deep down that information. And understanding functionality, so how things work, why they work that way, how they fit together with other objects. For example, you want to draw a car, so understanding ergonomics and the relationship with the user of that specific product with the final functionality of mobility, different types of transportation, and so on will go a long way, and we'll go back to discussing that later on. The third one is using for inspiration. So shapes, colors, and composition. You're also learning and adding to your visual library, but you are also distorting stuff to put in your own style, your own way, your own voice in your work. And the fourth, I have discussed this topic here on the channel before, is looking at other artists, understanding their processes, their bar of quality, as well as their journey. What things are highlighted from their journey so that you can understand what's going to be your highlight, what you value the most, what you want to draw more and more. And that will speak a lot from your own artistic voice. So without further ado, let's jump right in. The first thing we're going to look at is actually not Norman Rockwell that you're currently seeing. This for me would be a direct observation or direct reference kind of midway. So he is looking at something and making changes. We'll come back to that. But we're going to look at those two pieces of mine. I did those like 7 or 8 years ago. I used to do this kind of very strict, almost to the pixel copies, trying to hit this hyper realism. And I really thought that was the way, but not because I wanted to have this kind of art. It's because it was comfortable. I just like went in, and I did a video on this here on the channel. I went in, like took my time. This Obama painting is 8 hours of work. It could have been like 800 hours and it would be even more realistic. So you can use that and drill down. I think hyperrealism has its place. I love seeing those huge pieces of painting that fill up walls and look really realistic. I love seeing those, but a lot of people tend to come back to this as, oh, it looks like a photo is good. But this is a discussion for another time, but don't try not to fall into this trap of like just looking mindlessly and copying pixel per pixel, because it's not gonna be a lot helpful for your own voice, for your own style. I have discussed observation here on the channel. These are some books that I feel are really important if you are just beginning. So Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain and Charles Barg, I've discussed extensively, and I'll add links to the other ones. I have discussed Alla Prima as well, and I hope to come back with more videos on the other ones. The memory drawing, I'm close to finishing the book. It's very good. very informative, and it even points out to a lot of academic painters from the end of the 19th century that used memory drawing, Rodin and Whistler, and a lot of others that I hope to come back here and discuss on another video. I've also talked about James Gurney. I think this is the best resource for using references, or at least to demystify the use of reference so that you're not afraid of cheating anymore. So imaginative realism is one of the best resources if you think using references is cheating. It will go a long way using photos, people, posing, costumes, and so on. Color and Light, also a great reference. I have discussed the book here on the channel a lot, and it will teach you how to see. So it's one more step into observation. But let's jump into the use of reference. So this is a painting by John Singer Sargent of his master and teacher, Carlos Duran. So you can see that there are a lot of information that he used, not from the photograph he painted from life, but you can see a photograph from the same period. You can see the resemblance, but you can see also the things that he distorted for what he wanted to convey. He simplified a lot of those shapes in the face, and even like micro value changes that you can see in the face. He simplified that for the full readability. The hair is still there, as well as you can see the pose and so on. And those hands that you can see there would be a big enough discussion for a full video. So I'll definitely get back to that in the future. So you can see the face here, the simplification of a lot of those shapes. It's there, it's Carlos Duran, but it has a little bit of a change, sometimes conscious, sometimes even it comes with the process. You can see Dai Tsutsumi here. I've shown this image as well on another video on finding beauty on the ordinary. And you can see it's like a place that you wouldn't normally look as beautiful and extract the beauty from it, but you can see Dice doing that and simplifying the shape and even like designing the overall shapes in there. It's super beautiful, super well done. You can see that happen also on Rob Huppo's graphic LA. So he's painting from observation, sometimes even plein air, digital plein air. He used to take out the iPad or the notebook and paint from location, but simplifying all those shapes. You can really see the simplification in here. It's super, super beautiful, and it builds on top of gradually adding more texture and so on. You can go all the way to a Monet that will really focus on the light and the colors of that place. So this is the cathedral in Rouen, and this is the Palace of Westminster in London. So you can really see that the form is there. You can really understand it, but it's distorted. I'm going to use this word with a caveat, to his own voice, to what he wants to convey. And he did a lot of paintings from the same place, exploring different times of day and so on. I'll definitely get back to that on other videos as well. So in the topic of distortion, I love this sets of quotes, and I'll add links to the description from the blog Muddy Colors. You can see the use of direct reference in different contexts. You see Dave Palumbo here taking even 2 photographs of the face so that he can decide what he wants to use, as well as using like the badge here for this pose that is going to be hard to draw from imagination. You can also use reference for more cartoony style, because the position of the legs is really important to convey this kind of loose attitude and personality that he wants to convey here. James Gurney as well, once again, using even models like real models that he does, and that's beautiful to see on imaginative realism, as well as his tutorials online, to convey the light from a real place. What would that look like? What the bounce lights are going to look like in these underplanes and all, and how the dinosaurs would react to the overall environment. So this is using direct reference, as I said before, and this is what Norman Rockwell does a little bit here and there. With the observation, you can see the stylization in this character over here. There's a lot of personality on the photograph, but he changes a lot of that, even adding another person in here. So he's using and connecting a lot of different photographs and changing things here and there. So he changed a lot of the proportions from that first image that we saw. He changed the clerk over here with a different, like no hat and no tie. He changed the background for what he wanted to convey, as well as the color of the shirts. The stripes are not there anymore. So a lot of small changes that say a lot in the overall mood of the picture that you want to convey. So use your references, but change as needed. Another example is Steve Houston, and you can find a lot of different examples from art history and all. He uses that direct reference as well as his knowledge on anatomy and memory drawing and all to combine on this beautiful action-filled sequences. And talking about Steve Houston, I'm going to jump straight away into studies. So this is the part where we start going into a visual library and understanding of things. It could be like the gesture drawing and overall proportions and blocking shapes so that you understand all the volumes of the body. You can go like dive deeper into one part of the body, the hands, and really do a lot of different studies, understanding those shapes, forms, and how things connect. You can understand animals, materials, and doing studies from life so that you're also getting your observation skills better and understanding how to create a beautiful picture from observation and combine. There's a little bit of an understanding of composition here and how to get all those, especially in the still life, how to get those elements in a set that's going to look beautiful in the final painting and all, but you're also understanding how to organize readability of a wide array of information. It could be anatomy, it could be materials, it could be shapes, forms, and so on. So you definitely will go a long way doing a lot of these studies and really enhancing your visual library. On this topic, I think some of the best videos out there in the internet, I'll link all of them here in the description, are FZD's videos on visual library, just sketching and going all the way. But I do really enjoy the tutorials from Foundation Group. These ones in particularly, drawing techniques, part 1 and 2, and I'm gonna talk about part 3 later on. So they are using direct references, sometimes even drawing on top of them. You can see in this elephant over here that they are going to draw on top of them and then design more and more. So using things around the world and changing that for your own thing. I've known a lot of artists that use tracing to really understand how things look. So there is a part of that in some of people's learning processes. You need to find your own. Sometimes you're going to want to stylize so much that like tracing or using real proportions is not going to make sense. So really understand your use of reference and build on top of that to enhance your visual library, as well as practice your own designs and really look at the world differently. So part 2 goes on top of that, using more and more reference and distorting that for the purposes that you want to put that. But this brings me back to Ian McKay. I love his work. I have talked about him here on the channel before. And one thing, like he said, that one day he was drawing and he wanted to convey grass on his drawing. So he started searching on books and how would Andrew Loomis do this and other artists that he admired. And he looked through the window from his house and there was a huge like lawn with a lot of grass. And he was like, okay, so yeah, the best way I can get this visual library, I can get this information accurately is look to nature. And since then he has been looking at nature. So I just want to put this here to reinforce, look around you. You can search references for process and quality in other artists, as we'll see later on, but focus on building your visual library from the real thing and building on top of that and distorting so that you can really have that information going forward. So in terms of design, I love those two books. We have talked about like cars before. So H Point in terms of packaging and design and ergonomics and all of that is one of the best books out there if you want to understand product design, transportation design. This is the book for you. And if you want to like use that information and distort that to a more sci-fi environment, Doug Chiang's Mechanica is huge. Doug Chiang is the creative director or production designer for a lot of Star Wars projects nowadays. So he really understands sci-fi. And this book will tell you a lot from design and processes and how to build on top of each step to something to create something that is new. FZD also has a lot of great discussions on the topic of design. I'll add all the links to the description. And I've talked a lot about Foundation Group on my drawing for concept art video. So here are some of my favorites. I went through this. I'll probably add those to some videos down the line, my studies on this. So you use one real object, so this bridge over here from reference, and then you start like adding on top of that. So using different materials, breaking the bridge, adding a lot of vegetation or sci-fi vegetation on top of that. And you can really learn from this process. You can do the same with this gas station, bringing that to a Western kind of environment. So what would a gas station look like when you didn't have gas, you didn't have cars, you only had horses? So you have water for the horses in here. So you can like stop here. It's the same concept, but distorted to a different moment. And you have the same idea done from a different artist, Dave Sarabia, on using 3D, but taking that to a sci-fi environment, a future environment. So it's interesting to see the functionality of something built in different contexts. And I really learned a lot about this and solidify a lot of the things that I knew attending Gabriel Yeganian's course on Concept Design Academy. I have talked about this as well on the channel before. So the functionality that you can see here for this kind of temples and what was the purpose of it, the building of the project of the overall structure. You can see here in the Japanese how those stones are put together to really withstand earthquakes, because they have a lot of earthquakes in Japan. So you needed to think functionality. As well as in Egypt, you have floods. So how you're going to build in a way that can withstand the flood, but also almost worship it in a way, because it was the source of life and the plantations and all the cycle, the yearly cycles. So it was built with that intent as well, depending on where the temple was located. The same here for protection. So a lot of those castles need very good protection, not to be overrun by other nearby castles and armies in feudal medieval Japan. So there is a lot of functionality to be learned in here. And if we look at some other real references, I love this. This is Chichen Itza in Mexico. So you can see, I think it's 2 times of the year, you get this snake-like pattern in here that goes all the way to the head of the snake right here. So this is by design. This is the theme for the overall temple, and you're bringing that to the architecture. It's all about praising the sun, and this is the solstice. It has a lot to do with survival and plantations and cycles of life and so on. And there are lots more layers here that I don't know and that I can't tell you guys, but do your research on this kind of functionalities. Temples are about a lot more. So if you have a lot of water, so if you have tides, for example, you're building a temple near the sea and you have a lot of different tides, you can use that to inform your design, to really be helpful in what you're doing, and not in a very like straightforward way of copying some of those shapes. Oh, I want to combine Japanese with Mayan. And I really thought that was the way of doing architecture design until I did the course with Gabe and understanding what's the mentality behind each one of those and combining them also in a shape language For example, mountains are really important in both cultures, so you can bring those together. But and the sun as well, and protection, and it goes a long way. So you try to understand that. But also, if you are in a very different context, if you're creating a civilization that is underwater, it's not just getting those shape languages and mix and matching, kit bashing almost to get to a final design. You really need to understand building structures, processes, the materials they had available, and all of that will go a long way to inform your design. This is, I don't know how to say that pronunciation in English, but Ollantaytambo in Peru. Also, there is the temple to the sun on top of here, and you can see the shadows going all the way to the temple of the sun right here. So it's by design once again. Also, the plantations in steps, it's really, really important visually for us that are trying to understand how to convey something visually, but for their survival, how they were building like their plantations and so on. So try to understand that. How can you bring that to a different culture that is located in a high altitude, that really needs to do this kind of process to survive and to have different crops in different places and all of that. Once again, I don't know all the minor details, and I haven't done my research on this, but you should definitely do it. Books on this, just as some materials to go through later on if you want to dive deeper into this. I love Global History of Architecture. I have talked and did a small review of it here on the channel, as well as Francis Ching, Architecture, Form, Space, and Order, that goes into the functionality of architecture. I haven't gone through the full content of the book myself. I do have it here, but I heard great things. I'll definitely get back to that in a later video down the line. So we're going to jump into the next part, that is shapes. So inspiration and shapes to really inform what you're doing. It's the form language aspect. So here is a tutorial from the foundation group going on the form language, starting with those silhouettes. And it has its place as well, but a lot of people tend to focus too much on this and just do like silhouettes that are not functional. And that's it. Like that's concept design. So try to break a little bit that as a part of the process and add that on top of all the functionality that we've discussed before. So using those references and using different shapes. So I've seen, and I couldn't find the image, but using a broccoli to create architecture, for example. How can you bring that shape language to something new? Or using the broccoli to build characters, cartoony characters using that shape language. So there's a long way to inform what you're doing. You can see Mark Castagnon here bringing a lot of reference, like a crab from the real world, and adding that to a different context, to this fungi that they are trying to build here. I love discussions on the use of simple elements. In Brazil, at least in Portuguese, we call that semiotics. I haven't heard that term in English a lot, but it's the use of preconceived meaning to really convey something on the screen with simple objects or architecture shapes and so on. At least that's my understanding. If you have a better understanding of that, please share in the comments below. But I love Mike Hughes' discussions. I'll add links as well. But Rob Huppel's talks on GDC, you can find those online as well. And I'll have links here, are great on this. So art direction, it's not just Googling images. And this is awesome. Like understanding, it goes a long way on functionality, shape, the meaning of shapes and all of that. And one of the best examples I've seen so far, and it has been used by a lot of people, is Darth Vader's helmet, where you combine like a Nazi helmet with a skeleton and put that together in something that we haven't seen before, but we look at it and we definitely understand what it's trying to convey. It's trying to convey danger, evil, and so on. So this is awesome. So looking and watching those talks and understanding how people think. So it's a little bit on the journey and reference and processes from other artists as well, how they combine all this information in something new, something fresh. I love this Brazilian artist, Rael, using Crow, but building on top of that. There is a little bit of Edgar Allan Poe, the Crow in there, but using a lot of those elements. Some of them are more literal, some of them are more metaphorical, and you can build on all those elements and even all this minor that looks to us minor details. They have a lot of meaning on conveying what you're trying to convey, the personality of this character, and so on. So this is beautiful work artistically as well as design, in a design sense, in a narrative sense, conveying this story and so on. So I love this. So jumping to colors and materials, I have discussed Mike Azevedo here on the channel before. I love his work, but I love his process almost even more than his current work, because he posted a lot on conceptart.org forum. I have made a video on 5 artists and their growth, so we can look at that. So we have, and his blog as well has a lot of information. We can follow his steps until the point that he is today, or almost like a few years back, and understand his use of references. I love here this skull and metal that he turned into this skeleton with an armor and the red cloth here. So you're using a lot of the knowledge that you're gaining from different light sources and bounce lights and all of that to convey image from imagination. The same here, you're understanding this top backlight and bringing that to a different context and trying to really convey new light. So more cold light in here instead of this warm light from the sun. And the backlight or bounce lights, instead of being the sky and the blue that you can see here, is going to be a warm light. So you have the warm and cool balance in there, but you're changing that and trying to build something from imagination. The same here with the turtle and the texture and the materials, trying to bring that to something new. It's the same like top light in a different side. And that's great, because just changing the head to a different direction, you need to think from imagination as well. You're not directly copying. It's the same here. The skeleton is looking the other way. I think this is more one-to-one, but the other ones you can see the tweaks. So you force your brain to really understand and how to translate that to something new. And some more recent work, I love this. So a lot of different materials like chocolate, biscuits, metals, cloth, fur, everything in one image, snow, and all of that. So we really need to understand those materials so that you can control them. What do you want to render more? So the metals in here have a way different render than from here in the shadow area. So you're simplifying the shadow area, you're giving more information to the lit areas so that you can have a flowy composition that works on its own. So also this goes back to process and learning from other people's processes and quality, so that you understand that it's not about all understanding and just conveying those materials in what you're doing and translating. It's controlling them to what the image needs, to what the illustration needs, and not just putting it all together. I have made the mistake of trying to throw all the information that I knew on one image and trying to convey everything. So for that way, your eye will bounce all the way, and it's going to be like a very bad experience looking at that image. Going into composition, the last topic before going into artists, I love this website for looking at movies, artwork, and frames. So this is a collection of some of the best movies out there. I'll add a link to the description, but you can find evanerichards.com. And almost like a frame by frame cut from the movie, so you can find awesome composition and do some studies. This is what it looks like if you choose one of them. So episode 4, A New Hope from Star Wars, and it goes like almost step by step, as I said before, or frame by frame, and you can really get some of them to study. I did get some of them in here, and it's beautiful. This is a painting on its own. If you love Craig Mullin's work, you see some resemblance here of what he has done on some of the courses and so on. And you will see a lot of the work from some other people that are learning from the same source. I love the use of warm and cool tones and all of that. As I said before, this is a painting on its own. I'll also add every frame of painting here to the description. It's a very good channel where you can learn a lot from it. Some of my studies on this topic. So I took some of that information and tried distorting it a little bit. So these are frames from Indiana Jones, and I tried to do it vertically. So I cut a small part and trying to change the aspect ratio of some of those people and shots to convey something new. Also, this is a more direct copy, trying to simplify some of the shapes, but really admiring the work done here. I could have gone one extra step, and it would be great. And I potentially will do it in the future to get one artist as inspiration and do this frame and do this composition in the style of another artist. For example, Andrew Loomis. I love this hatching work. So getting this kind of detail in here would be awesome to understand readability and how to control the values and convey what I want to convey. This is also Andrew Loomis, more details, more on this like heavy cloth situation, even with the birds here instead of the monkey, but we could do a little more direct comparison in here. And this really leads me to the last topic of artists and understanding how they do things. Sargent, starting with Sargent, and Sargent will be an inspiration for other artists, a lot of artists actually, but he had his own inspiration. So here you can see his direct copy of Velázquez Las Meninas from the Prado. He went there and did this copy. So you can see he's trying to understand conveying values, simplifying a lot of the stuff, not very one-to-one in a lot of areas, but doing more of a quicker study of what the whole image is all about. And later on, Sargent would use all this information and composition information and the mood to do his Daughters of Edward Dallert-Boyt, one of his most famous paintings, currently at the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston. And I would have to do a video on like Sargent and composition specifically to go through this content. But there are other videos here on YouTube discussing this that are really good as well. So you can see the use of the master and the process and the understanding and the change of that into something that is his, something that he wanted to do, something he was commissioned to do, but experimented a lot in conveying the personality of the people in there, not directly copying what he did, a full-on like copy back at the Prado. So next is Igor Sid. I have discussed this artist. This is a contemporary artist working at Blizzard Entertainment. I have discussed here on the channel before. So his direct reference from Edwin Austin Abbey is great. So you can see here, it's not direct, it's inspiration. And he even mentions that is a big inspiration on the artwork. You can see his work up here, and you can see Edwin's work down here. But you can see the direct reference, but in a different context. So you're not copying, you're using the composition and paying homage to that amazing artist. If you look at like Kill Bill and Tarantino as a whole, there is a lot of homages in his movies. Also, there is a bigger discussion here of what's the limit of homage versus like plagiarism and all of that. But I don't want to go into that topic. So just be aware of that when you're going through your studies in your references. We can also see Klimt reference directly in Igor Sid's work, mostly for inspiration for studies. So it's really interesting to see. I mentioned Craig Mullins before, and Craig even mentions on some of his interviews that he had a lot of inspiration and direct reference from Sargent. So you can see a very, very direct correlation. I even thought that it was from the same place when I saw not those together, but even together, we can feel that it could be the same place. But I recently found out that it's not. So this is Craig Mullins' painting. I don't remember. He posted recently where this is from, but this is Sargent's watercolor from Villa Vizcaya in Miami. So it's great to also like look at that even on Google Maps and see the inspiration for Sargent and what he did there. So this is Craig Mullins once again, a digital painting, and this is Seed Mead, his second biggest influence. I think this was done in acrylics or gouache. So great artwork for Blade Runner. And those are the direct references, but you can see a lot of different references that come to Craig Mullins' work. And he has built on top of that and explored not directly the references, but using that as inspiration to build his body of work. You can see Waterhouse in here. It was also a big inspiration. And I had like the privilege of exchanging some chat messages with Craig and asking some of these influences from his patron work. And he mentioned Waterhouse as well. So you can see more Waterhouse in here. Before like seeing some of Craig Mullins' work, there is a little bit of Howard Pyle in here as well. So you can see the combination of a lot of different references to build something new, to build something fresh that looks beautiful. I love the current work that he's doing. Once again, building a lot on the top of masters, but really going through his own process. So he was using a lot of line work here and really building on top of that. I think this was a workshop for schoolism. I'll add a link if I find to the description below, as well as this. This is very Waterhouse driven. There is also another image done for Patreon that I have mentioned before that is Waterhouse influenced. So it's interesting to see how he's using a lot of the information from the masters to really bring to something new. This can be done by one specific artist, but it can be done by a project as well. So I love here the work done for Assassin's Creed and some other Egypt-inspired intellectual properties and entertainment products. I'll post this image to the community tab later on so you can see it in more detail. But you can see here Lawrence Amatadima and a lot of his Egypt work that is super awesome. The Death of the Firstborn was a huge influence on Exodus by Ridley Scott. You can see David Roberts here and here as well. And even a direct correlation between Stephen Messing's work and David Roberts from Exodus. It's really great to see the direct influence that Ridley Scott wanted for this piece of artwork. More work from Stephen Messing on this topic, as well as this overall aesthetic. Assassin's Creed also used the work of Jean-Claude Gauvin. So it's really great to see historical illustration combined with video game work to be really accurate on what those cities could have looked like 2,000, 2,500, or even 4,000 years ago. So this is great. And you can see the influence of this work in the work by Raphael Lacoste, as well as Martin Deschambault. There is also some tutorials here if you want to learn from those people. I'll add that to the link, those links to the community tab as well later on. So you can go slowly through this and really see the influence at your own pace and some of the other artists that worked on the project. I love Jeff Simpson's work as well. as JC Wong. These boats are really beautiful and a lot of historical influence in here as well. And you have like Guang Yutang, sorry if I'm butchering your name, and Vincent Gagno, once again, sorry if I'm butchering your name. I'll add that to the tab and you can look at your own pace. And if you follow the channel long enough, you know that I love to do this investigation work. If I see that one artist that I admire is working on one IP, on one film or game, I'd like to investigate who else is working there so I can follow different work. So I did this for Jungle Book. We saw Ian McKeag's image before, and also a lot of the work by Vance Kovacs. I saw him posting, so I wanted to follow and find out more. So I'll also post this to the community tab so you can see it closely. But there is a lot of great work here. You can see Seth Engstrom and a lot of keyframe illustration, the designs by Vance Kovacs, some of the animals in there that I really love. You can see Michael Kutz, also Jonathan Bach. It goes into drawings, and I love to see those drawings. Anis Naim, so more keyframe illustration, some designs of the same scene. So what's that going to look like if it's caught on fire, different times of day? A lot of gesture for the monkey scene here and how that related to the movie. So I love doing this kind of boards so I can see what the movie is all about. And to be honest, I like this more than the final result. Sorry for saying that out loud, but I do. I love that these artists had the chance to work on this so that we can all look at this beautiful work. And I would love to see this advertised more or promoted more, is what I mean. Galleries and stuff like that. It would be awesome to see this kind of work and the process that went into getting the final result. Even the research in the original work with the great work done by Milt Kahl and all those amazing people. So yeah, a lot to see here. I'll post to the community tab and you can take your time. And I'll add links to all these artists and their work. I did the same for The Lion King. So just starting up here. Once again, Vance Kovacs is who I saw posting some work in there. So I went all the way into looking at some of this beautiful work done. Seth Engstrom once again. Finan McManus did some work in there. But you can see a lot of like keyframe illustration and inspiration. You can even pause the video and look at your own pace. Juan Gia did some work. I love the work by Faraz, so look him up. Shay Shetz, once again, this kind of scene explorations and what the environment could look like are really beautiful. All the way to Jamie Jones. He did a lot of work for video game industry as well. So look him up. I'll add links both to this video and to the community tab later on. And just to end this video, I want to touch upon one point that I have discussed here in the final video of my series of drawing, painting for concept art and looking at artists for inspiration. So a lot of these artists that we've seen here on Jungle Book and Lion King, they have a lot of different work out there, from books and original work. You can see here from Vance Kovacs and Justine Sweet, the Eclipse. I do have that book here in my collection. I love that. You can study directly. So Shay Shetz here on Concept Design Academy, if I'm not mistaken. Juan Gia's book, Ian McKeag, Shadow Line. Ian McKeag also has a course in schoolism. I love this AI discussion by Michael Kutz with Maciej Kuchara. I think it's one of the best discussion on this topic. So if you want to get really up to date on what's going on and the mentality behind it, I really recommend this. I'll add links to the description. Also, Marshall Vandruff and Vance Kovacs here teaching tutorials by Anis Naim. Jamie Jones has also done workshops and tutorials, as well as this is from Finian McManus, and this is a tutorial done for Terraform Studios, his concept art production house and outsource studio. So just a quick recap. First, you can use reference to learn and improve your observation skills, and as direct reference for whatever you need to draw a hand from a hard angle or a different camera angle or distorted lens, stuff like that. You can always use direct reference and distort it a little bit, as we saw with Norman Rockwell or Sargent and so on. Building visual library in your understanding of things. Remember to draw from memory as well, so you can really ingrain that information in your brain. Functionality and design, breaking stuff down to what they are made for and how they work. Inspiration from shapes, colors, and composition. You can use a lot of that, but on top of functionality, just like don't go just combining shapes, kit bashing. It will be a shallow way of designing things. And finally, people, processes, quality of work. So the cross-hatching from Andrew Loomis, how can you use that even on your studies and all of that. I love the hatching by and the zone that I want to bring back on other videos here on the channel as well. And the journey and the work done by the artists you admire. How can you learn from them? How can you support their personal work and so on? And what about you? Please share in the comments. I know I wasn't exhaustive here, so you probably are really eager to share the way that I forgot about how to use references and so on. And I highly encourage that, as we can all learn together. I hope this was informative. You enjoyed the video, and we'll definitely catch up on other videos down the line. Thanks for staying to the end, and have an awesome day. Bye. Take care.